And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again. It's your favorite time of the week. It's Keepin' It Rio time. And folks, today we've got episode 240 of Keepin' It Rio, which is pretty crazy to me, but here we are. And I have got myself a wonderful guest. We literally just met about 2 minutes ago, which is usually the way that I like to do the podcast. I have gone on Facebook and reached out to folks and asked them to come aboard with stories of inspiration, humor, education, whatever it may be. And today's guest took the opportunity to be here with me, and I'm very grateful. And I am very happy to welcome today's guest, Mr. Malcolm Grissom, to the show. Malcolm, welcome to Keepin' It Rio. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun.
You know what? I want to start this off by offering your audience giving something away, because I'm a giver. That's what I'm here for, is to give things away. So I'm going to give away a $150 value. I teach virtual improv classes 2 a week, and I am going to give a link to you, Chuck, so you can put that out there. People can just click on this link, join this link. They'll get a Calendly link then, and that would tell them the days and times of the current improv classes that they can choose and take. And it is my gift to all of you. $150 value.
I love it. And that is outstanding. Someone's going to take advantage of the opportunity, and they're going to get some improv skill enhancement, which everybody could use that, I'm sure. Thank you for starting off by creating some amazing value for the audience. I love that. And I think that's going to be a great precursor to the conversation that we're going to have today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We now know that you're an improv coach, but tell us a little bit about Malcolm, and we'll see where this conversation takes us. What do you say?
Most definitely. I would definitely do that. My light keeps going on and off. Let's see. Here. Very weird.
Technical difficulties. I love them.
Yes.
Anyway, let's pretend like that never happened. I'm not going to edit it out, so everybody will know that the light was acting goofy on us, but that just builds character.
Yes, that's right. Ghost man, half face. Anyway, so who am I? I was born. So here's a little tidbit that I like to share about myself. I was born on stage.
Nice.
I was born in San Francisco. I was born in the back seat of a sports car in front of my entire neighborhood. My entire neighborhood was watching this scene unravel as I shot out, and I was born right there on the back seat. My dad loved me, and he said I was such a special baby because I was born and conceived in the same place.
All right.
So yes, I've been, after that, I've always been on stage. I've always loved that. I started with acting, so I started starring in my first play when I was age 7. So I love to act and perform and to be in front of people. And then at age 9, I had a horrible disease. I hope some of your listeners have heard of it. If not, maybe they could do some research. It's called Reyes syndrome. REYES syndrome. And it is mainly a childhood disease, although it affects all ages. And how this affected me is I took some acetaminophen. So if you ever give your baby aspirin or acetaminophen when they have a common virus, like a cold, something, this could happen. So what happened exactly in my case was that my brain and kidney cells, it affected them and they started swelling. My brain cells started swelling, and fortunately enough, it was really a miracle in my case. It really was, because at the time I was living in Hawaii, and the doctors there didn't know about Ray's syndrome. There was actually a little girl on a different island who had Ray's syndrome at the exact same time, but she passed. What could happen is the brain cells just started swelling, and if they're not caught soon enough, bow, they're gone. And in my case, though, they just started shrinking, and I was fortunate enough to be in a semi-comatose, meaning that I was bedridden for 6 months. I wasn't able to walk. I wasn't able to talk, barely able to move. And gradually, I got that back, very slowly gained those skills back. My mother pushed me back into school long before I was ready. Not only that, she put me back into the class with the kids who already knew me and loved me, just a year before, when I was this bright, class clown. And now I'm coming back to school. I'm a 10-year-old version of Frankenstein's monster. And the kids, kids are kids. And when they're scared, they lash out, much like adults. And so I was bullied a lot, and I've had to overcome all of that, had to relearn how to walk and talk and deal with all of that. I've become a stand-up comedian. I was a comedian for a while. I had a good 10 years, just over 11 years, about 11 years as a stand-up. And then I went into storytelling and solo performing, and now I'm into speeches, public speaking, and I speak mainly about the power of adding spontaneous laughter and applied improvisation to work. I start with work, but really to our lives, and how that really helps us in so many ways. So that's me.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm very honored to have you here on this show. That is very inspiring. And let's kind of go back a little bit, if it's all right with you.
Sure.
You're a young 7-year-old out there thriving, flourishing, really putting yourself out to the world. And like you say, a great, lovable personality. And then something kind of unexpected comes along that changes the entire course of your life. You deal with this, obviously, as a 9 and 10-year-old child. It's probably extremely scary, probably something where you have really no understanding of what you're going through or why or what potentially could happen. You get better. And like you say, your mom puts you back in school. And when you get back to school, you're a different version of what the children remembered from just a year and a half earlier. So tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, what that was like when you were going back into school after just going through obviously a life-changing situation that you maybe hadn't quite gotten yourself to the point where you were, maybe in your own mind, quite ready to do that. What was that like for you going back in there? And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about how kids are, because I definitely understand that. And I think a lot of adults are the same way. But what was that like as a young man going back into a situation where obviously there had to be, a lot of fear and maybe, just nervousness about how it was going to go? Tell me a little bit about what that was like for you.
Well, yes, it was scary. I really, throughout the whole process, I was powerless. Come from back when I was 9, and I was laying in this hospital bed, and I had just opened my eyes for the first time, just realized that I was in an unfamiliar environment. And then to realize that I was in a hospital, and that I could move my finger that much. I don't know if you can see the details, but I'm talking like half an inch, maybe. I could move my finger half an inch. That was pretty much all I could do as far as moving my body. The whole thing was powerless, and I was scared. And then throughout my recuperation, my grandmother had come, and my grandmother, my stepfather, and my baby brother, I found a lot of love there and a lot of acceptance. And so to start school, I was going into a place where I was having to leave that blanket, if you will, and go into school, even though I knew these people, which was a plus, and I was very popular when I left. Literally everybody loved me before I left. And everybody in the entire school pretty much knew me, because my stepfather was a music teacher, and this was a very small town very small farming town in Hawaii. It was a school, high school and elementary school combined. So everybody knew who I was, which helped my mind, that I wasn't at least just going to where no one knew me. But still, there was still this hesitation. And then when I was actually in school, well, there was a lot of bullying. My friends from before were my biggest bullies, and I didn't know at all what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I internalized a lot during that time. So it was a very, very scary time. Very scary time for me.
I can only imagine. And, as a youngster going through that and not really understanding, number one, what's happened and why it's turned out the way it has, but seeing all the people that you were close to turn on you and kind of paint you into a different situation, it had to be very lonesome and it had to be, very sad for you. But what I really love about your story is at some point, you broke out of your shell again. And now, like you say, here in modern times, you're doing all kinds of great things. You're helping people, you're making people smile and laugh. Let's talk a little bit about something happier here. And tell me about the time, the moment when it either struck you or you just realized, hey, I need to get back to being me and I need to be who I was and who I am. And I need the world to get to know who I am. And I need to share that. As someone that's been through a lot of bullying, I'm sure it was very difficult to put yourself out there because you know that the world is now filled with people that are not going to be nice and loving and friendly. And unfortunately, that continues on into adulthood for a lot of people. But as a youngster, what was the turning point for you where you were able to kind of get out of that to the best of your ability, at least, and start to turn things around and start to become an extrovert again and start to put yourself out there with some semblance of confidence?
Well, it started it started with the physical. So when before I was sick, I was very, very physical. I would run, I would play a lot. And so one of the things when I was able to walk from one place to another, and when I was able to function, I wanted to get back into being physical and playing sports and whatnot. My stepfather took me to try out for the T-ball team. And I tried out for the T-ball team. That's baseball for kids. The baseball is set on a rubber tee and kids hit the ball off the tee. For those of you that don't know what that is, T-ball. So I went out for the team and the coach said, no, you can't join this team. I'm sorry. It's a liability issue. You're too slow. You might get hurt. So they didn't let me go on the team. I tried for the track and field team. Same thing. The coach said, no, I'm sorry, you can't join. And because I was a liability. Well, my stepfather was one to say, hey, you really don't need this. And I think my stepfather and I've always been very intuitive, very in touch with my intuition, my higher being, right? So my higher being or my intuition and my stepfather were both people on my side saying, hey, you just do you. You don't need to let someone else tell you what you can or can't do with your life. And so if you want to run track, you just run. And so every day after practice, when the track was free, I would go out and I would just run on the track and just keep running. And eventually I got smoother in my movements. right? My movements got smoother. And finally, the track coach said, hey, I see that you're out there, all the time and you're taking initiative. We need that on our team. Please join us. So I joined the track team. And I joined the track team, ran throughout high school, and then into college. And I did first 4 years in college. I ran track. And that experience was really the first thing that helped me blossom into getting back into acting, and then comedy, and then the storytelling, and so it all began with the physical. It all began with the physical.
That's incredibly inspiring, Malcolm, and I really appreciate that because I can sympathize and I can understand. I remember when I was in school, we had a couple guys that were kind of in the similar situation, not obviously not exactly the same, but wanted to do something and were told that they couldn't. And rather than just accepting that and taking no as an answer, they said, you're not going to stop me. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go out there. And just to get yourself noticed after all of the hard work and all the solitude and all the feeling of non-acceptance, to be brought back in and told, hey, you know what? Not only are we going to let you be on the track team, but we want you to be on the team. Mm-hmm. What a great feeling that must have been for you. And to get that acceptance then from your teammates and to start to see that people are getting back on board and getting on your side again had to be an amazing feeling for you. And that is absolutely inspiring. God bless you for that. Because, a lot of people would just give up and they would accept their situation for what it is. They would blame circumstance, but rather than do that, you created your own. And I admire that tremendously. So let's talk a little bit about that. You go through the high school years, you start to gain some of your popularity back, I would assume, as you started to get more acceptance from the people that were around you. And then you mentioned going into college. Tell me a little bit about the experience of, going from being in a state of basically, like you said, being able to move your finger a half an inch, going through school, getting your confidence back through the entire process and all the hard work that goes along with that, the solitude that was also a part of it, and then going into a university and becoming a member of a team, going into further your education. What was it like for you going from the high school in a small place, and I don't know where you went to college yet, but we'll find out in just a second, to something that obviously had to have been a little bit larger with more people, newer faces that you probably weren't familiar with? What was that transition like for you?
Well, the transition actually happened in middle school, or in high school, I should say. So I was fortunate enough to start my freshman year in high school. So I guess that would be grade. So right after, so middle school is 7 to 9. I guess that's 9th grade or 8th grade. Whatever. I don't know. I'm sorry, all you.
We're all beyond that at this point. Yes, I understand though. It was somewhere between 7th and 9th grade.
But so I started that in Hawaii, in the school in Hawaii, and then I moved to California to live with my dad. So I came to high school in San Francisco, and the School of the Arts. It was the School of the Arts too. I had auditioned for it, and I got accepted into the School of the Arts, and that's why I moved to California, or I should say that's one of the reasons I moved with my dad. And so I was also very fortunate because this all wasn't brand new to me either. I should say when I was 3, my parents divorced. My father stayed in San Francisco, and my mother took me to Hawaii. So I lived in Hawaii. I was raised in Hawaii. And then when I was 15, that's when I moved to live in San Francisco with my dad. And so during that time, during all those years, during the summer breaks, I had been going back and forth. So I had friends. I was making friends. In fact, I was even in a young people's musical theater group here in San Francisco through the Rec and Park. And so I made my best friend, and I was fortunate enough that my best friend was also in the School of the Arts. So I was going into a school where I already had at least my best friend and, a very small group of people I already knew, which was good. So it was just like it wasn't a big transition for me, other than, moving from a small town culture to a city. But even then, I lived with my dad. I was surrounded by people I already knew. So I was just moving right into a different part of my life, different stage of my life, right?
Yep. I love that. And that's awesome that you were able to make that transition kind of seamlessly. Because I know as kids, sometimes moving to different places, it kind of starts that entire situation over again for a lot of kids. And then you go back into that situation of not having any friends, having to adapt. So, what an awesome way to be able to do that without having a whole lot of trauma, without having a whole lot of anxiety about it. You get into the school, you start doing your thing, you start blossoming again, acting, you start getting into some other things. And then all good things must come to an end. You get out of school. Now you're looking at the rest of your life thinking, okay, what am I going to do? So, what was the game plan for you as you were going through this process for how your adult life was going to turn out? What was the vision, and how did this all play out for you?
So, by the time I graduated from high school, my plan was to become a stand-up comedian. That was my plan. And so I was going to open mics. I was doing that. And then because of bills and other things, I wasn't paying bills, but I mean, I was basically, my father really made me realize, okay, it's time, you have to get a job. You can still do this, but you have to get a job too. And my father's always been a 9-to-5 guy. He's always been a working class. And so he's always pushed that. And so he says, now it's time for you to do this. And so I reluctantly became a customer service representative. Actually, they're called employment program representatives with the state of California for the unemployment insurance department. And I started out doing customer service. From there, I quickly went into adjudicating claims. So that's making decisions, the legal decisions on around eligibility, having to be aware of the unemployment law, what that is, having to interview both the people that are applying for unemployment and the former employers, and gather all the details and really make decisions. That's what adjudicating was. But I was doing this during the day, and at night I was still wanting to become a stand-up comedian, and I was still pursuing that. Well, I did that for a number of years, and I think it was about the time that I was still with the state, and still with the employment development department, but I transferred to a different section, which was more of an in-person, closer to career coaching, right? And when I started doing that, it was against my intuition, realizing that I'm put on this earth for more than just entertainment. I'm great at comedy. I was successful as a stand-up comic. I still want to go back to that world, actually. But what's very important to me is the fact that the average person spends 900,000 hours of their life at work. Some even more beyond that, especially now, because the age of retirement is, it keeps getting further and further. And there are so many people that it's over 50% of workers globally, not just in America, but workers globally, that are either dissatisfied or extremely unhappy with their jobs. This thing that they're having to do for more than 1/3 of their life, it's taking them away from their family, it's taking them away from thriving, how doing what they want, what they should do in this world, right? And through my understanding that that's really the direction I wanted to go into, and my love for laughter and comedy and humor, I started finding ways to combine that. And then that is what led me to eventually do what I do now, which is, I'm the stand-up CEO. I go to companies, especially in corporate America, and I teach corporate America that humor, spontaneous laughter, and implied improvisation is essential to the functioning in their work. It's essential to saving them money. it's essential to creating these atmospheres that people want to be in, that people can thrive in, that people are having fun in, some fun, and still being productive. And that's really the direction where I am right now. Now, I'm taking that even further in the future. When we're looking at the future, my love has always been with kids. And in fact, that's what I do. That's what my day job is right now. I'm a career counselor for the Job Corps program. And if you don't know the Job Corps program, that takes at-risk youth from 16 to 24, and it gives them a place where they can go for education, to get their education, and to be trained in one or two trades, which they can then get certified in, and basically gives them a good jump start for their lives. And that's my day job. So anyway, the future, I'm taking what I'm doing now is I'm concentrating on corporate America and work, but implied improvisation and spontaneous humor. Spontaneous laughter and play is so very important. And it's very important to instill that into our youth, who are then in the future going to be part of our, they're going to be working, right? And they're going to be part of our workforce. To instill that, and I'm wanting to take that and specifically use those skills to combat things like bullying prevention, suicide prevention, conflict resolution, or conflict management. So that's the future of where I'm going with this.
I love that. And that's going to touch so many different lives, and it's going to help so many people in a unique way. And whenever I hear someone's story of how they started with the dream and then they realized that something else was a higher calling for them, and they moved in a different direction and started to become very, I guess successful would be the word I'm looking for, in helping others to overcome some difficulties that they may be having, because I totally understand what you're saying. Most people that I know, they don't like going to work. They hate their job. They don't look forward to the 9 to 5. They don't look forward to getting up. Their boss is a jerk, whatever. I'm very blessed in that I have my own business and I do something that I love dearly, which is roofing. And it's not so much roofing as it is the people that I get to work with, the people that I get to help. I just came back from an event in Dallas for the last couple of days where a bunch of my friends from all over the country met. We helped each other to improve on some things. We got to be in a room with like-minded individuals, and the overwhelming feeling leaving that for almost everybody was, wow, that was great. We needed that. We needed a little reset. Sometimes we don't realize how good we really do have it. And I know a lot of folks who don't feel that way because they're not in a situation like that. So let's talk a little bit about this corporate America. You go out and you help people in organizations that may have, dare I say, anger, frustration, depression, anxiety, any number of things that could be developed from the workforce and one's perception of how the workforce is toward them. So tell me about the first time that you got to go out and you got to work with a company, you got to see some folks, and you got to sit down and kind of get some information on how they were feeling and how you felt after you realized, hey, you know what? This is something I want to continue to do moving forward. I like helping these people. And then I'm going to ask you about a specific, maybe one first person that may have reached out to you after the fact and said, Malcolm, you changed my perspective. Thank you. Because of you, I don't feel that way anymore. But what was it like that first time you got to go out there? Obviously, you're probably a little nervous. I would anticipate that.
No.
Going in front of group, not any nerves whatsoever. You're a man of steel. I love that. So you go into a company and you find some folks, and tell me a little bit about that first experience, which really triggered this for you.
Well, it's so it all starts, the whole process starts with my speaking to leaders. So my speaking to leaders. So I've already gone in and I've already spoken to leaders. I've given them my keynote talk. I've presented that. Then, so when they choose to book me in a workshop, to do workshops, a half a day workshop, it's not as if I am going into somewhere fresh, blind, because I've already, one of the things that I do before I even accept, like, especially a workshop, before I do that, I have, a process of getting to know the group, essentially. I don't speak to each person, of course, but I have a general idea of what I'm getting into. So I go into a group setting, I basically already know who they are. And through the exercises that I'm giving, through some of the things that we're doing throughout our time together, then of course I'm learning more and more about them. And no, it's not, that's not nerve-wracking at all to me. That is, I think being nervous is, for me, it would come to, it would hit me most before I give my keynote. Like if I'm going in to face a bunch of leaders from a bunch of different organizations and I'm giving them this keynote, that's where I would experience most of my nervousness. But how I would combat that is to remember that I'm sharing something that is extremely important. I'm giving them the opportunity to learn about this, whether they choose to learn about this or not, or even go the extra step of having me come into their group to help lead their group. That's on them. So that's how I rationalize it. And I'm not nervous as to, well, are they going to choose me? Should I, how far are they going to go? That, all those butterflies.
I like that mindset so much. And you're right, because once you realize that you do have a higher purpose and that what you're bringing to the table is very valuable and can help a lot of people indirectly and directly, it does kind of take that nervousness away because you realize what your value is. And it's like, well, hey, If you guys don't see it, then I'm sorry, but I think you're going to see it. And I think you're going to love what I have to present and what I bring to the table. And then you go in and you talk to these organizations after you've gotten a little background. You kind of have a feeling for the room, so to speak. But there's always a couple people that stand out. You know, the first person that reached out and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm very thankful that you came in to speak today. I was feeling down about this. I was getting ready to quit. I hate my job. I hate getting up in the morning." What was one of the first, or maybe one of the more memorable experiences like that you've had along the way, where maybe someone just completely out of the blue just said, "Hey, you know what? Thank you for what you do. You've made a difference for me." Because ultimately that's what keeps us going, and that's what keeps us moving forward and keeps our passion, ignited with it as well. So do you have any examples of people that have reached out to you after the fact and said, "Thank you, Malcolm. I appreciate you"?
Just to that level. No one's reached out and said, I was about ready to quit, and you changed my life, you changed my perspective. It's just on the thank you, this was great. This was, and eye-opening. And especially, I think um, what really motivates me to keep going in the corporate arena is to get that from leaders, right? Yes, to get that from employees. They love doing that. I kind of know that. I've been doing this long enough, and with enough people, leading enough people in playful activities, that I know the average Joe is going to really enjoy what I'm doing. But it's when the leaders themselves come in and they say, "I think I'm going to incorporate some of this in my leadership." That tells me that I'm making a difference, because that is saying, "Hey, we're not just going to do this on Tuesday when we've invited you in, but we are going to make this an ongoing situation."
I love that. And you're right, because that's when you've reached the masses, when they say, "Hey, we're going to use what you just taught us. You've given us something that's going to change the way that we do our business, the way that we view ourselves." And there's nothing more fulfilling when you're doing what you love than to have that acknowledgement and have someone say, "You know what? That really did make a difference." So kudos to you on that. I've got a couple quick things I want to discuss. We're coming up on our hour already. This has gone by really quickly, and I've enjoyed this conversation tremendously. You talk a little bit about stand-up. Okay. I've had a couple stand-up comedians on the podcast over the course of the years, and they've all got really funny stories about some of the ways that they got into stand-up comedy. Obviously, it's not a super conventional 9 to 5 job. It's something that you've got to go out there and continuously work on and refine and improve upon. Tell me a little bit about your experience as a stand-up. And then, like you said, it's something that you're looking to maybe get into again at some point down the road. But let's talk about that. What was it like being a stand-up comedian? And then we'll kind of veer off into the future, and we'll probably put you on stage in Madison Square Garden in front of 100,000 people that are laughing their heads off. But what's that experience like? As someone that's gone through so much in life, I think stand-up comedy is another one of those things where it can humble you really quickly, but it can also probably provide you with an enormous amount of confidence if you go out there and you do a really great job. So what was your experience from the beginning and through your stand-up career like?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. So you talk about nerves. So like I said, before I ever went into stand up, I got back into the groove of acting, and I was acting in front of people. I was it starts going back to, again, let's go back to Honoka in Hawaii, when I was very first in the speech drama club. This was actually my first venture back, and this is what really got me started in acting again. I was part of the speech and drama club in my little high school and elementary school combined. And one day we had an assembly, a school assembly. And so I'm in this auditorium. All the instructors, all the teachers and kids. So there's 300, at least 300 people, right? And so I'm giving my presentation along with the rest of the team. And in this presentation, so to get into this story real quick, make this story, because I love this story, this image, make this quick for you. So here we are. We are about the team. We are about 5 members on the speech and drama team. We're giving a little skit. We're performing a skit. It's called the Mystery of the Last Newspaper. We're performing this for everybody. It's really amateurish. Like, we're just standing there in a line. It's like a firing line, right in front of everybody. We're standing there, and each one of us just kind of steps up to give our line, and then the next person steps up, right? And so my line, I only had 6 words, thankfully. Because mind you, when I was doing this when I was 7, but I had this whole disease that I was getting over, and bullies, and there were bullies in the audience. And so I was really, really nervous going into this, but I only had 6 lines. I've got your newspaper, Mrs. Yamaguchi. And so when it was my turn, I said those lines, and when I finished, I got it all right, and I was so excited that a long line of snot shot from my nose, hung inches from the ground, and then like a snot yo-yo. Now these are kids. These are kids. So everybody is laughing. It's hilarious. I'm completely horrified. I'm embarrassed. I run into the bathroom. I hide into the bathroom because in my mind I'm going, oh no, these bullies, now they've got something else to bully me about. I'm never going to live this down. And then it was at the end of that, after that, the bullies, actually, the people, this group who used to be my best friends, who were my biggest bullies, came up to me and they said, oh, Malcolm, that was great. That was so fun. We really like that snot bit. Which wasn't a bit at all. It was a mistake. But that's really what's got me going. And so anyway, fast forward a couple of years to my first open mics and doing my open mics. And yes, it's very nerve-wracking because even as an actor, you're there portraying a story. You're there portraying someone else. But as a stand-up comedian, you're there revealing what you've written, as funny. So you're revealing your own writing. Hey, this is my writing. And people may or may not laugh at it, but you are right there. It is a conversation between you and the audience. There's nothing more raw than that. And so, even though, yes, I have had a lot of confidence growing up, being a stand-up comic just increased that tenfold. So that was just amazing. And then when, again, years later, when I have learned more about the craft and about how to lead the audience and riff with the audience, how to improvise with the audience and have fun and conversate with the audience, go back and forth and laugh and joke, and then getting to the point to whereas I know I have a very good idea what's funny. I don't know what's funny, but I have a very good idea of what's funny and what the audience are going to laugh at with me and how I can manipulate that. That is a lot of power, for lack of a better term. And it's a great feeling coming from way back when I was a kid and not having that power and being very powerless, not being able to move my finger very much. And now being able to manipulate and have fun with the audiences. It's a really great transition.
Yeah. Wow. What an awesome story. And who would have ever guessed, right? Accidental snot rockets skyrockets you into the confidence that you thought was going to be lost. And that ended up being the turning pivotal moment for you, which that's how it usually works with people. Complete accidents where sometimes you think, oh my gosh, that just ruined everything. And it turns out to be the thing that made it absolutely what it became. So what a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And before we wrap this up, I always like to ask this question, and I think it's very important for our conversation. Go ahead.
Before you ask that question, I just wanted to throw in another reminder to the audience, because we've been talking, it's been great, but the program that I'm giving is called Improv Your Business, right? Improv Your Business. So there will be a link. Look for that link. I'm going to give that to Chuck. Chuck's going to provide it. Improv Your Business. Click on that link. That will give you 2 months free of being able to access the improv. I teach 2 virtual improv classes a week, and you'll get that for 2 months for free. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Chuck.
No, I love it. Great minds think alike, because my question was going to be, anyone that's watched this episode, that's heard your story and been inspired by it, or has laughed and felt good about themselves along the way and thought, man, I'd like to learn a little bit more about this guy. I'd like to be able to follow him, maybe on social media, maybe even potentially reach out and see if there would be an opportunity for us to do business together. What are some of the best ways to get a hold of you? And what are some of the best ways that people can find to maybe see if you'd be a good fit to work with their companies?
Okay. Well, my website, malcolmgrissom.com. My social media, most of the business is through LinkedIn, and that but all my social media handles are the same. It's just Malcolm Grissom. So for instance, with LinkedIn, it's linkedin.com/in/Malcolm Grissom, to one word. So those are great ways to get a hold of me. My email is malcolm@malcolmgrissom.com, and contact me and let's chat. Let's see if there's a fit. Let's do some business.
Absolutely, my friend. We're going to get someone on board with you, and we're going to change someone's life and their perspective. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here. I had to reschedule the first time that we were scheduled to meet, and thank you for understanding. I actually did get home about 30 minutes after what our scheduled conversation would have been, and that was after a 6-hour drive. So thank you for letting me kind of refresh a little bit and have some energy this morning. It is Sunday. We're actually watching this on Thursday, but this has been an absolute pleasure for me. Out of the 240 episodes, I think you're going to be one of the more memorable ones that I've had, because I learned a lot. And this is why I love to do the conversations the way that I do, is neither of us had any idea what to expect an hour and 2 minutes ago. Here we are wrapping up what's been an amazing conversation, an amazing episode. And I definitely thank you so much for that, my friend. It means the world to me, and that's why I do this podcast. So thank you for that. Before I call it a day, there's one thing I need to definitely take care of, which I do every episode. Thank my sponsors, roofer.com. That's ROOFR.com, as you can see on my shirt and on the screen. And what Roofer is, Malcolm, is a all-inclusive software program designed by roofers for roofers just like myself. And basically it takes us from the initial contact with our homeowner all the way through the entire process. We order our materials, we provide proposals, we put everything together through this program, we collect our payments, and then later on down the road, we send reminder emails and texts when it's time for things like general maintenance and such on your roof. Roofer has been my sponsor for 3 years, and I absolutely love everything about them, and I hope that I can work with them forever. Thank you to my sponsors for sure. Thank you to everybody that watches Keepin It Rio. And until next Thursday, ladies and gentlemen, I end my episodes every time with the corniest line in the world. Don't forget to keep on keeping it Rio. And Malcolm, if you would stick around for just a couple seconds after I end this, we'll get everything cleared up on our end and we'll finalize our conversation. But thank you guys for watching. Here's a quick little ad for Roofer, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you.
We're Roofer. We know that managing a roofing business can be chaotic, so we created a single platform with all the tools you need to easily run your roofing business. Stop switching between multiple different softwares and experience streamlined operations from lead to payment in hours instead of days. Visit roofr.com to get started for